You're listening to Romancing in Paris on Paris Underground Radio.
Hello, and welcome to the Romancing in Paris podcast. I'm your host, Lily Heise. In this podcast, we'll be traveling around the city as I pick out my top romantic spots per arrondissement. You don't have to visit these places only as a couple. Exploring them can be the expression of your own love of Paris. Are you ready to get romancing in Paris? Welcome back to Romancing in Paris. We're continuing on with our second tour of the left bank arrondissements in today's episode. In the last episode, we took a lovely amble through the Quartier des Peupliers, a lesser-known village-like neighborhood of the 13th district. So today, we're drifting over from the 13th to its neighboring district, the 14th. Ah, the 14th. Along with the 12th and the 15th, it's one of the most family-oriented districts of the city. All of these arrondissements have very few big-name sites or museums, and instead provide a peaceful, safe, and nice setting for raising families. That doesn't mean that these districts are without charm. However, they don't have too many spectacular or especially romantic places. In our first tour around the arrondissements, we visited a very, very unique place in the 14th, one of the best hidden spots in all of Paris. The Abbey and Cloisters of Port Royal. If you missed that episode, I suggest you go back and listen to it. It's number 14. Therefore, in this episode, I thought I would take you to another secret place. One which has an interesting story, also with some links to the history of the 14th. Grab your sherry and your popcorn. We're going to an all-in-one date venue, the Entrepot. L'Entrepot. You may not have heard of it, which is the case of a good number of Parisians. However, its history goes back quite a long time and has evolved through various incarnations. Let's first delve into L'Entrepot's connections to the history of the 14th. As I mentioned earlier, the 14th district is rather family-oriented today. Nevertheless, parts of it, especially the area in and around the Boulevard Montparnasse, used to be rather bohemian, particularly in the first half of the 20th century, when it became a hub of Parisian artists, writers, and other creatives who lived on the adjacent side streets. The boulevard became a hotspot of Parisian entertainment, thanks in part to the now legendary cafes, La Coupole, Le Dôme, Le Rotonde, and Le Select. Other types of entertainment establishments also popped up, and still to this day there is a little theatre cluster in the 14th. Maybe we'll visit this in a future episode of the podcast. With the area's roots in entertainment, perhaps it isn't surprising that a unique entertainment facility was founded here in 1975, L'Entrepot. Located on a quiet street, Rue Francis de Présençay, the building was originally a printing house called L'Imprimerie Bessin, which was converted into a textile warehouse, an entrepot in French, which gave the venue its name. Originally called l'Olympique Entrepot, the venue was the impetus of Socialist President François Mitterrand. Although its main focus was to showcase independent film, L'Entrepot became a multi-arts cultural center. In addition to its movie theaters, it has a theater for plays, a concert space, art gallery, bar, and restaurant. How cool is that? The center has always been cutting edge. It held some early screenings of films by Margaret Duras and Rainer Weiner Fassbinder, and has hosted a number of editions of film festivals, including the International Festival of Avant-Garde Film. Japanese designer Heise Miyake held a fashion show early on in his career, and L'Entrepots Pink Elephant Art Gallery hosted an exhibit of works by queer artist Frank Arnell all the way back in 1979, which helped broaden awareness of the LGBT community. For 10 years, the center flourished. However, it wasn't set up to be financially viable, and unfortunately went bankrupt and had to close in 1986. Thankfully, the venue didn't stay closed for long, as Swiss documentary filmmaker Carol Wassopoulos took over its reins the same year, 1986. Its focus shifted to audiovisual experimentation, and it was one of the first places in Paris one could see the new technology of videos, including ones by new wave icon Jean-Luc Godard. The following year, in October 1987, it hosted the 400th edition party of the prestigious Cahiers du Cinéma magazine, a further display of L'Entrepots' importance on the Parisian film scene. In 1995, the venue changed management again, yet its foundation of promoting the avant-garde was maintained. A large terrace in the courtyard was added, which doubled the venue's space. And in 1997, L'Entrepot hosted one of the first editions of the Sherry Sherry Queer Film Festival, which still takes place today, annually in the autumn, albeit at other venues. In the early 2000s, the vast glass roof was added atop the restaurant. A new space for art exhibitions also opened. A few years ago, the venue changed management yet again, and the most noticeable change was in its restaurant, which was renamed Le Jardin Secret, or the Secret Garden, and became an outpost of the trendy restaurant Fulgurance. It is run by chef William Coutier and features an inventive tasting menu. If you're enjoying this episode of Romancing in Paris, you may also like to listen in to our sister podcast, Navigating the French, which explores the origins and cultural significance of a word in the French language. Romancing in Paris will be right back after a word from our sponsors.
And now, back to Romancing in Paris.
Despite the changes over the years, the venue has stayed true to its origins and still strives to promote experimental and independent film, music, and art. Shall we drop by to visit it? If, or I hope when, you visit it, I would suggest checking out the program on their website so you can make the most of your trip there. Check the address too, as it isn't on a main street in the 14th, which perhaps can add a little bit to the fun of your date. Ideally, you can plan to come for a movie in one of its theaters or a concert, but give yourself some extra time so you can visit the art exhibition, have a drink in the courtyard, or meal under its airy glass-roofed restaurant before or afterward. If you don't want to take in a film or concert, you can also come here simply for a coffee on its lovely, tranquil courtyard terrace. Since it's hidden, it makes for a lovely discovery in itself and an ideal place for romantic wooing in Paris. Thank you for joining me for this latest episode of Romancing in Paris. If you're new to the podcast, you might like to take a listen back through previous episodes, which share many other unique romantic places in Paris and beyond. You can also peruse my website, jetemmeneither.com, which also has a wide range of great articles. Until next time, happy romancing in Paris.
This episode of Romancing in Paris was produced by Jennifer Garrity for Paris Underground Radio. For more on this show and shows like it, please visit parisundergroundradio.com.